Nothing is wrong. I don't intend to pull your coat, you know it when I'm gone. You never miss your water, baby, till the well run dry. You will know it the day I say bye-bye. I'm tired of your jive. Yeah, baby, I'm tired of your jive. Sitting there looking at me like nothing is wrong. You will know it, baby, when I'm gone. Jive. Baby, I'm tired of your jive. Refuse to be your fool, cause you know I'm tired of your jive.
People are beginning to gather for the Gabrielle Giffords staff-supported town hall on the budget deficit. There's several of us from PDA here. We were all prepared to hold up signs about the people's budget, but gosh darn it, we're not allowed to bring them in.
At the Congressman Giffords town hall meeting on the budget, what would you cut? So the emphasis is on cuts right away. And let me point this out. No signs will be allowed in the town hall meeting. So leave free speech at the door is what we're being told. And yet the Supreme Court says that money is speech. And unlimited amounts of money provide unlimited amounts of speech for those who have it. But speech is not protected, at least at this congressional town hall.
Give thanks to both of
them. There's probably 100, maybe 150 people here for the budget deficit talk and forum. We are waiting for the speakers. It's about 6:30. It should be starting pretty soon.
It's about the tough choices that this country faces. The simple fact of the matter is our financial condition is much worse than advertised, that there is not a party of fiscal responsibility, that the last 10 years have been the most fiscally irresponsible in the history of the United States, and that we can spend a whole lot of time blaming a whole lot of people, but if we don't start making some tough choices soon, we could see a debt crisis in the United States. And if we see a debt crisis in the United States, it's going to be much higher interest rates, it's going to be an economic recession or worse, much higher unemployment, and our position in the world and our future standard of living at home will be at risk. In 1800, the federal government was 2% of the economy. This year it's 25%. It's headed to 39% on autopilot, absent a change of course. If you add state and local government would be over 50% of the economy by 2039, absent a change of course. That can't happen. It's not going to happen. Spending has been out of control, especially in the last 10 years, and both parties are responsible. Debt in the last 10 years has more than doubled. Stated differently, from George Washington to William Jefferson Clinton, total U.S. debt went up to $5.6 trillion. But in the last 10 years, it's now $14.3 trillion in 10 years. And it's set to double again in about 10 more years if we don't change course. And this year is particularly bad. Revenues are less than 15% of the economy versus the historical average of about 18.2. Spending is about 25% of the economy versus the historical average of about 20.5. We are spending $4 billion a day, every day, including weekends, more than we take in revenues. And in fact, you could cut discretionary spending to zero, which includes national defense, homeland security, judicial system, Congress, the executive office of the president, education, transportation, environmental protection, interior. You could cut it to zero. We're still $2 billion short a week. And revenues have have been going up, but they haven't been going up nearly as fast as expenses. And by the way, not all tax cuts stimulate the economy, and not all tax cuts pay for themselves.
Right on.
This is fact. Now, we do have a progressive tax system. When you count income tax and payroll tax, the top 20% of Americans pay 68% of all taxes. The top 1/10% pay 11% of all taxes. Now, we can debate whether it's progressive enough, but it is progressive. Believe it or not, 51% of Americans pay no income tax. That's a problem in a democracy, especially when the income tax funds all or substantially all of the constitutional responsibilities of the federal government. At the same time, even though the top marginal tax rate is 35% for individuals right now, the median effective tax rate for the top 1% of Americans is 18.8%. Why? Because a vast majority of their income is capital gains, which is taxed at 15%. So you have a problem on one end, and you have a problem on the other end. And our corporate tax rate, we have the second highest effective tax rate for corporations, which obviously need to compete. Now, this is the statutory debt ceiling limit, adjusted for inflation. And what you'll see is that from 1940 on till about 1982, we really didn't have much of a problem. But starting in about 82, we lost control. In the 90s, we restored fiscal sanity because President George Herbert Walker Bush, 41, supported tough statutory budget controls. So did President William Jefferson Clinton, one Republican, one Democrat. They expired in 2002, and look what happened after they expired. Washington has been totally out of control. We have tax cuts, we have spending increases, we have undeclared and unfinanced wars, we have expansion of entitlement programs that we've already promised way more than we can ever deliver. And if you promise more than you can deliver, ladies and gentlemen, that is a false promise. And eventually, that will come to bear. So we have to raise the debt ceiling limit. The question is, in exchange for what? And it needs to be in exchange for tough budget controls that will force the 88% of spending that hasn't been on the table. That includes Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, defense, other security spending, as well as comprehensive tax reform that will make our system simpler, fairer, more competitive, more equitable, and generate more revenues than historically we've done. When you're a debtor and you kick the can of tough decisions down the road, it works against you. We're near the end of the road. It's time to start making tough choices. And this is a logical order to be able to start addressing things. If you want something to happen in Washington, it has to pass 3 tests. First, the policy should make economic sense. It should be socially equitable, which includes the concept of social justice, and culturally acceptable. What I mean by that, this country is not going to allow itself to be taxed at the levels of Europe. At the same point in time, we need a sound, solvent, secure social safety net. We need a level of universal health care coverage that's appropriate, affordable, and sustainable, but that's not what we have now. In fact, the last health care bill will compound our problems tremendously, because the chief actuary of Medicare says that it's going to cost us $12 trillion more than the politicians told us. $12 trillion. That's a lot of money. So first, it's got to make economic sense, be socially equitable, culturally acceptable. Secondly, the math has got to work. If you're trying to balance the budget, stabilize debt to GDP, whatever, the math has to work. And last, it's got to be politically feasible. What does that mean? You've got to get a majority vote in the House, 60 votes in the Senate, and a signature of the President of the United States. And if you don't have those 3 things, you have nothing. Right now, the Republicans have nothing. Right now, the Democrats have nothing. And we are headed for a cliff at breakneck speed. We've got to change course. The 60 to 70% of Americans, including probably most of you here, are largely disenfranchised. It's time to wake up, make tough choices in order to make sure that our future can be better than our past. And we look forward to your questions. Thank you. The simple fact is what we're trying to do is we're trying to give you the facts about where we've been, where we are, where we're headed, if you will. And yes, I'm somewhat familiar with the Progressive Caucus budget. I will also tell you there's no way that you could get a majority vote in the House, 60 votes in the Senate, in order to pass it. And the truth is that there's not going to be a budget this year because the House and the Senate are too far apart. And in fact, the Senate hasn't even passed a budget yet, and they're probably not going to pass a budget. So the truth is that President Obama is going to have to negotiate with the Congress and agree on what the level of spending is going to be next year. But what we need to do is, rather than just focusing on what the budget is for this year, we need to figure out what we're going to do to address all the issues we've been talking about, and we need to start soon.
I think the Progressive Caucus deserves a heck of a lot of credit for putting out a budget, and their numbers work. I think that but you can look at the Ryan budget and say, well, that's sort of a different way of going. And if you get budgets that appeal only to a partisan base, you can certainly do it. You can do it, and you can do it that way. The question is, can you get the votes? And as Dave was saying, no, you can't. So that's why I think you need to have a mix.
Not if you can't get it.
The Ryan budget passed the House, but it's never going to pass the Senate, nor would it be signed by the President. What's really got to happen is the first three words of the Constitution have to come alive. We the people. Because we are responsible and accountable for what does or doesn't happen. There are a number of plans out there. There's the Simpson-Bowles plan. There's a Bipartisan Policy Center plan. There are a variety of other ones that are out there. I'm going to issue one from the Come Back America Initiative in the middle of July. But what really has to happen is not necessarily have the plan. There's got to be public pressure brought to bear on elected officials, Democrat, Republican, Independent, doesn't make any difference, to demand that they have a plan and to demand that they start to act and to have political consequences if they don't.
One thing I would observe is your question assumes that Congress can be embarrassed. I wouldn't want to hang my hat on that. I think that the Bowles-Simpson Commission did a good job. I like to think that we did a pretty good job on the Rivlin-Domenici Commission. Those are specific plans. There are good plans out there. And I think that one of the good things about this debt limit debate we're having is that people are beginning to focus on actual solutions rather than just lamenting the problem.
At the same time, that the math doesn't work to solve the problem by just taxing the rich or eliminating corporate
It would go
loopholes.
a long way.
That doesn't mean that shouldn't be on the table. But let me give you a sense. We're in a $62 trillion hole that grows by trillions of dollars every year. And
Cut the military budget.
The military budget is 4% of GDP,
No,
okay?
no,
It's
no, that's a lie.
It is,
Let me
okay?
finish.
It's 4% of
That's your
GDP.
question.
It's an audited number.
Got other folks who want to answer.
So the bottom line is the things that you talk about need to be on the table, but they won't come close to solve the problem. Let me give you an example. You could eliminate the Bush-Obama tax cuts tomorrow. You could pull out of Iraq and Afghanistan tomorrow. You could eliminate all foreign aid tomorrow, and you could eliminate all congressional earmarks tomorrow. That's 15 to 20% of the problem.
And make a fiscally sound system, so I would support a single-payer system. But having done with Medicare, it certainly needs fixing, but it's at least a system that can be fixable. My question would be, is since the politicians in Washington don't seem to be able to be embarrassed into cooperating, they don't seem to be able to negotiate a cooperative settlement, what's behind that? And I think you went over it, but rather quickly. I think it's this huge river of money that's going into the campaign of all politicians. Until you get that and run into the problem, I don't think they're going to agree, and no matter how embarrassed they may be. And I think we're just going to have a huge problem. What is your specific suggestion about campaign finance reform?
Given two recent Supreme Court decisions, the only way that you're going to be able to deal with campaign finance is a constitutional amendment. Right? I will give you a few thoughts. First, the only people who contribute to political campaigns are people who can actually vote, which means that corporations and unions cannot contribute to political campaigns. Secondly, that there should be some limit on how much individuals can finance their own campaigns in order to make sure that people aren't in effect trying to buy office, okay? Thirdly, you also have some issues with regard to a lot of these other types of entities that have sprung up in big numbers there. And I could go on, but the bottom line is the only way you're going to deal with campaign finance is a constitutional amendment. But I would also respectfully suggest we need redistricting reform, we need consolidated primaries. This is one of the few districts. There's only about 70 competitive districts in the United States today. 70. Which means the wingnuts decide, okay, 365 out of 435. That's another problem.